Hello, and welcome to Limelight's March 2022 issue. The funny-looking instrument on the cover is called the Kangaroo Pouch Tone Tool, one of the free music instruments that Percy Grainger created with Burnett Cross, and an early kind of synthesizer. In our cover story, Electric Shock, Paul Ballum Cross examines why the mainstream classical world has remained largely acoustic, despite the fact that electric and electronic instruments have been around for over 80 years. In Grandest of the Grand, Nick Fuller, an expert on French opera, takes us into the world of Fromental Halévy, who wrote La Juive, one of the 19th century's grandest operas. La Juive was one of the most popular operas in its day, but after the Nazis came to power it fell out of favour, and it hasn't been staged professionally in Australia in over 150 years. Fuller discusses the opera itself and the new production that Opera Australia is about to stage, set in 1930s France. La Juive is about a forbidden love affair between a Jewish woman, Rachel, and a Christian man. At the end of the opera, Rachel dies for her faith. As Caitlin Vincent writes in her feature Diva or Cannon Fodder, women often don't survive in opera. In the top 20 most performed operas in 2017-2018, 75% of the leading female characters were dead by the end, although they have stunning music to accompany their demise. In recent years there have been calls to address opera's gendered violence, but as Vincent explains, it's a complex issue with no easy fix, although empowering more female composers, conductors, directors and designers is a good start. In our fourth feature, In Search of Adventure, Patricia Maunder interviews Finnish piano virtuoso Paavali Jumppanen, the artistic director of ANAM, who has recently moved his family to Melbourne. He discusses his passion for pursuing the new, his relationship with Pierre Boulez, and his aim to create an environment at ANAM that allows for the students to develop their artistic personalities as well as their musical skills. Olivia Stewart interviews Eddie Perfect, who is happy to be back on the boards in 9 to 5 the musical after a grueling few years writing songs for Broadway. I interview Maihi Cloesi, the artistic director of the Bowral Autumn Music Festival, and composer Jessica Wells, who has a world premiere at this year's festival. And in Cutting Edge, Gabriella Smart wonders if COVID delays have led to a more in-depth exploration of original ideas by contemporary music makers. We also report on the re-signing of pianist Ruth Slinchinska by Decca Classics in conjunction with Universal Music Australia. Slinchinska, who turned 97 in January, was a child prodigy in the 1920s and a Decca artist in the 50s and 60s. She is also the last living pupil of Rachmaninoff. Her new solo album will be released in March, and Limelight is interviewing the remarkable pianist and will run a big profile of her in our May magazine. And as usual, there is plenty more. Joseph Tawadros discusses the oud in our Playing Up column. Actor, director and artistic director of State Theatre Company South Australia, Mitchell Butel, shares his love of music in our My Music column. Australian composer Joseph Twist answers 5 questions about his new oratorio Watershed, The Death of Dr. Duncan, which has its premiere at this year's Adelaide Festival. Tom Donald argues that it's time to rethink music education in our Sacred Cow column, while in this month's Soapbox, Guy Noble has a humorous vent about all the box ticking required to be allowed to work safely at the Sydney Opera House. Enjoy.